And we are live after another Detroit Pistons loss. Well, that was brutal. I mean, that's really the only way to describe the way that Pistons game end as Detroit collapses in the fourth quarter, falls to the Miami Heat 106 to 98 to start this new season 0 and 4. You had solid performances from Cade Cunningham, came out and had 14 early in the first and essentially kind of cooled off as started getting blitzed throughout the rest of the game. You had Jaden Ivey. I think his stat line's a little misleading because he had those, two big threes or, those two threes when the game was pretty much already out of reach. He had about before that he had about 12. Now he has 18, but also had 4 turnovers and overall shot 6 of 16 from the field. Look, you're not going to win a lot of games in this league when you continue to turn the ball over, when you're constantly having to dig yourself out of holes, and when you can't consistently string together quality play. You're especially not going to win a lot of games in the NBA if you can't shoot over 25% from the field from the fourth quarter. That's just the way it is, right? And the other thing as well is the Pistons need more consistent contributions from their veterans all around. The obvious one is Tobias Harris. His struggle since coming back to Detroit has been noticeable. He's been trying to find his way in the Pistons lineup, and coming into this game, he was having a difficult start. He's been shooting 33% from the field, 21% from three. Tonight was not his finest performance either. Shot 4 of 11 from the field, no for 0 for 3 from three. He only had 2 turnovers, but it honestly could have been more. The thing that sticks out to me about Tobias's game right now is you can just kind of see the age and the wear and tear a little bit whenever he's trying to drive to the basket, whenever he's trying to create shots off of the dribble. Those opportunities just aren't there in the same ways that they were anymore. And granted, we're playing against some of the best teams in the NBA, Miami, one of the better defensive teams in basketball. Jimmy Butler is someone who's always going to have a little bit of a chip on his shoulder whenever those two play because of the whole Tobias Harris over me thing that happened in Miami or in Philadelphia, I should say. But nonetheless, the Pistons brought him in to be that, that steady hand on the court, that consistent figure. And although you can certainly point, to, his defensive performance, you can point to his rebounding. There's ways that he contributes in the game, but nonetheless, the Pistons need that shot making. They need that stability alongside Cade because outside of Cade, Ivy, and Tim Hardaway Jr., they for the most of the game they were struggling to get guys in double figures. Jalen Duren, overall had a pretty decent performance. I will say this was probably his best defensive game of the season for sure. The last couple of performances, he's starting to definitely look better as a rim protector. He had 3 blocks with only 2 fouls, which, for Jalen Duren, will definitely take that as he continues to head in that direction. And, listen, I think there's always a little bit of juice whenever he's playing against Bam Adebayo because that is the close comparison. That is the parallel where you're talking about if Jalen Duren's going to take that next step, if there is, that ceiling version of what is, peak Jalen Duren, it looks very similar to a Bam Adebayo. And look, as they pointed out in the broadcast at the beginning of the game, Jalen Duren is doing better at this point in his career than Bam Adebayo was doing it at that point. But nonetheless, the Heat also had more ability to be patient with Bam's progress, with his development, because of the fact that they were not losing at this clip, that they were going, still being a part of playoff runs. And even when they weren't at their, peak performance, they're still one of the better teams in the Eastern Conference. So that's kind of the thing that, you look at and go, well, still a ways to go, but nonetheless, I mean, the potential is always there. He has some passes, that are really solid. He has a good feel, for the ball in his hands, but at the same time, they just need more from, across the board. You look as well, Malik Beasley, someone, who's had some really good shooting performances, really, kind of hit or miss. Tonight, he was 1 of 12 from the field, 1 of 7 from three. Definitely not what you want to see, as far as shooting goes. And unfortunately, it's kind of been a story again this season of the Pistons not quite getting a lot from their, from their second unit, especially when you look at guys like Simone Fontecchio, who played so well in Detroit when coming from the trade deadline, albeit, not a ton of action when he came to Detroit, but he's been kind of struggling to find his rhythm within that second unit thus far, which is a little surprising. Between him and Malik Beasley, they were actually a combined 2 for 12 from the three themselves. So, you just look at the fact that those guys are, as good as shooters as we know that they can be, and as stable as we've seen them be, they just aren't that. And, you bring up Cade's legs. I think the entire team as a whole really got tired there. It wasn't just Cade. Multiple guys' shots were falling up short. Multiple guys were, towards the end, that the team looked tired and they were playing like it. And, the difficult thing as the Pistons continue to dig themselves in these holes, as after they, string together some minutes of good basketball, turn the ball over, but, break their back on the defensive side of the ball, allow easy opportunities, allow guys like Tyler Hero to get going when last thing he needs is, more ability to get going. And all of a sudden, you're down by double digits and you're having to dig yourself out of the hole. And the Pistons did a really good job of doing that in the third quarter. It took a minute and 3 seconds for Miami to get back up by 7. It took a minute and 57 seconds for Miami to already be back in double digits. And from there, the game was seemingly out of reach. The Pistons couldn't chain together solid possessions on the offensive side of the basketball and really didn't start hitting shots relatively consistently until the end of the game when Jaden Ivey was getting the looks he wanted from three because Miami pretty much knew the game was over at that point. So overall, when you talk about, just the performance and the diagnosis of why this team is losing games, it's for the same reasons that they were losing games last year. And it was the same reasons that they're losing games the year before. It's because of their inability to take care of the basketball. It's because of their lack of ability to adjust to the pressure and to the intensity of the fourth quarter. The best way I can put it, I put this on Twitter earlier. You lose a game doing the same things for so long, it becomes a mental hurdle. And you almost feel like it's coming on and you have nothing to stop it. The best way I can describe it is for the first 3 quarters, the Pistons play to win. But in the fourth, they play to not lose. And, you kind of see that in their energy. And even, as the fourth quarter slips away, you can see it in their faces, almost that, oh no, here we go again. Like, it's not just something that the fans are feeling, it's something that the players are feeling. And, as much energy and as much organization as a JB Bickerstaff has brought, as much as, Trajan Langdon has tried to address shooting over the summer, there's only so much they can do in that regard. And especially they're going to have to not let this slip too quickly for Detroit, because I think the last thing that this group of players and that this organization can afford is another losing streak to the magnitude or even close to the magnitude of what Detroit saw last season. And you look at their schedule. Again, we've talked about that, how this is a gauntlet to start the season, how they have the strongest schedule, like strength of schedule in the NBA to start out this season. It does not get any easier after tonight. I mean, if anything, this was probably your best opportunity until Friday to get your first win of the season, because now they're going to be going to Philadelphia on the 30th, and all reports suggest that Paul George is going to be making his Philadelphia debut against Detroit. And then you're going to be going up against the New York Knicks team at home, a Knicks team that looks to be contenders, a team that is, coming off of a difficult performance against Cleveland tonight and wants to be getting in a better rhythm. And they are a class, in the class of the NBA with their shooting and with their defensive ability. You're at Brooklyn on Friday, but as we've learned from this team, you can't really take any games for granted. They're actually looking at the calendar. They're actually in Brooklyn on Sunday. My bad. But that's really the best opportunity is Sunday, is for the Pistons to come back and actually bounce back and get a win. And it doesn't get easier from there either, because, you're playing the Lakers, then you're playing the Hornets, the Hawks, the Rockets. Like this schedule is very strenuous. And my question, again, not to overreact, only 4 games. You're playing against some of the best teams in the Eastern Conference. All those quantifiers being set, the storyline to watch as this season goes on is what is the leash for this group? What is the amount of games that they are going to give these guys to work this out, to try and improve, to develop, to play through these struggles? Like at what point does Trajan start assessing the roster and start making decisions about who is going to be here long term and who is not? Because we knew those conversations were going to happen this season, especially as Langdon is getting acclimated in Detroit, as he's, evaluating his players. My question is, if they do keep losing at this magnitude, if they do keep struggling and this gets to a 8-game losing streak, if it gets to a 10-game losing streak, is there a point where the front office has to step in and start making calls, start looking elsewhere, start, you know, looking at, is there a way to, change the being of this roster while not mortgaging our plan of trying to, you know, build this thing the right way and not, get rid of your assets. So those are like really the conversations that I think we're going to be having, over the coming weeks, especially if things don't turn around. And again, it's not like there aren't things where, the Pistons seemingly are improving. Like, again, the jump shooting in certain areas seems like they're getting a little bit better. Jaden Ivey seems more confident from beyond the arc. That's great. But there's also those moments where you just scratch your head and you wonder what the pass he was trying to make was. Like, there's that one where he was caught in a double team and he was like fading away and threw it over his head, trying to get it to the wing. Very easy pick off from Miami. Gets him in the fast break and transition. Gets him another easy bucket. Like, those are the types of things that are just killing this team. And especially a team like Miami, they had the similar struggle to the Pistons in the third quarter. But since they are a team with an established culture, a team that understands what it takes to win, you notice a different level of intensity when the fourth quarter comes along. And not that this group doesn't recognize it's the fourth quarter, but it's almost like, again, they're playing to not lose. So it's one of those things where, as fans, it's understandable to be frustrated. As an organization, you almost have to, temper and check your patience and make sure that guys are still bought in. All you can really do is, allow these coaches to learn this roster, to see how they can improve, and consequentially for the front office, for them to see exactly what they have and what, if any, changes are going to need to be made. Because, I mean, at this point, like, there's been 3 different coaches in 3 years. There's now a brand new front office regime. They're not firing Trajan Langdon or JB Bickerstaff anytime soon. It's not like they have any reason to have the blame pointed to them. This is on the players now. That's where the conversation is had, and they're the ones that are going to have to galvanize and start progressing and moving this thing forward. So when I look at, where this Pistons team is, it's very similar to last year, but those glimmers of hope in the sense that you are seeing some guys individually take the steps forward. And those glimpses are starting to become less of moments and starting to become more consistent. Again, you see Jalen Duren, things are slowing down for him a bit. I still think Jaden Ivey is having a good start to his season as well. Cade, outside of the turnovers, looks like he's extremely confident on the offensive side of the ball, especially shooting the basketball. But as a team, they still just have to learn what it takes to close in this league. And until they do, they're going to continue finding themselves in these situations. So I mean, the other thing as well is how often do you see the Pistons up by double digits or leading for a long stretch of time in games? Because when you are playing on your back foot all the time, when you are consistently having to come back from a lead, when you are in those situations, like, at what point is that not exhausting? Like, you're having to sprint and push the pace and play catch up the entire time. No wonder Detroit continually finds themselves in these situations. But again, the Pistons have plenty opportunities to turn this around. There's still 78 games on the schedule. We are just getting started. They are up next in Philly on Wednesday, and we will be here to cover that as well. Good Lord. Anyways, that's going to probably do it here. Would love to know your guys' thoughts on what you're seeing for the Pistons in the comment section down below. Thanks again for tuning in and for all the support here with the content. Be sure you like this video and subscribe to the channel so you're not missing any of the podcasts, live streams. We are ramping it up significantly as the season is getting started. Thank you guys again for tuning in. We'll catch you guys next time from Half Court. Be sure you're subscribed.